email a couple of questions that she said that you guys might have. So I had a bit of thought on it. But really, whatever comes to mind for you, whatever questions you might have, that's what we're here to talk about and address. Okay. But actually, before we begin, let me pray and learn a little bit more about you. So let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks and praise because that is what we were created to do. And we give you worship because that is what Jesus saved us to do. We thank you for the life that we have, for the future in eternity that we are eagerly waiting for. We thank you for the strength of our voices, the air in our lungs, the skill of our fingers to play instruments in worship to you. We give you thanks and praise for all these things. And Father, we commit the next bit of time that we have to you. We ask that by your Spirit you will make it fruitful, that we will do things, we will learn be encouraged and strengthened in the technical aspects of music and song leading. But also, more importantly, that in our hearts we would be strengthened in our conviction that you are King, you deserve all our worship, and we would leave with more joy and more desire to sing praises to you. And we pray this in your Son's name. Amen. Okay, so so my name, as you know, is Daniel, and I have been attending church since I was very young. When I was in grade school, my parents made me take piano lessons, which I hated at first, and then after learning a little bit to play the piano, I loved playing the piano, but I still hated practicing, so I never got very good, but good enough. And then when I started going to youth group, when I joined high school and all that, I discovered that all the cool kids played guitar. It was only like the nerds who also did math class and stuff that played piano. So I decided that I should learn some guitar as well. I learned bass guitar at first because I looked at a normal guitar and there were 6 strings and you had to play all 6 of them at once. And then I looked at a bass guitar and there were 4 strings and you only needed to play one at a time. So I thought that was the easier one to do. So I played bass guitar and then learned a bit of normal guitar. And then every now and then I mess around on the drums, but I was never took any formal lessons or never got very good at that, but just understood the basics of how to develop a rhythm and what's the basics of what you need to support the rest of your band. So I did a bit of that, and then went to college and then moved to Australia, as you know, and all throughout I've had opportunities here and there to continue, in being involved in music ministry. And it's actually funny enough, this year is the very first year since, I became a Christian that I've not been involved in music ministry. Life got a little bit busy and I had to just pick and choose my priorities. But I do miss it because every time they do music when they are on Sundays, I think, I wish I got the opportunity to get up there. I had, it was me and 2 close friends that we played as a trio together. It was me on piano, my friend Julian on guitar, and our other friend Jeremy on drums. And we led as one team, and then there were 2 other teams in our church. And then I switched churches at the start of this year, and when we joined a new church, I had to pull back from music ministry, but they kept playing. So they got another piano player named Liam. And so now the 3 of them lead as a team, and every time I see them up there, I think, they replaced me. Anyway, that's a bit of background in terms of my experience. Can I just, maybe real quick, just go share your name and maybe what instrument you play and roughly how long you have been involved in music ministry?
My name is Swan. English name is Samuel. And then I learned 3 years of flute and then a few years of guitar.
Okay.
你讲中文可以啊，他听得懂啊。
可以。
他只是不会讲而已啊。如果你 喜欢讲中文就讲中文，喜欢讲英文就讲英文，然后听不懂你就教他。
我讲中文。
可以讲中文。
讲中文好。对，我叫崔阳，然后现在在跟天地叔叔学贝斯。
Wonderful.
Frida, I know how to play piano for like 10 something years. Yeah.
I think you're definitely better than me then. 名字海丽。
乐器。叫 Ariel 还是没有学乐器，跟叔叔学的 guitar，
Yeah.
还没开始。
跟有唱歌吗？是
Sings.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wonderful.
I'm Patty, and my music background is just basically like you, was into piano. Hated every single minute of it, practicing, but yeah. Then later on, I guess I went to college, got a degree in music education.
Fantastic.
Never pursued anything, and yeah, I guess Bloom Church. Did a little piano there, and then moved on to the Baptist church, totally piano, totally, American hymns, and then now we're back here, and I'm back here trying to figure out the Chinese part of it, the contemporary Chinese Christian music, which is very different, but nice to learn.
I get you.
Still learning, in that process, and and for you younger people, learn now, because I feel that it's very tough to pick up after a certain age.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think we all. Yeah.
But, that's.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, my name is Alex. So I don't know any instruments. I basically the private cater for this group.
Oh, nice. Very important.
So last time they visit my house, just provide food.
Yes. The most important guy on the music team.
I'm Johnny. I don't have much music background other than my son and daughter are learning, started learning the pianos. But I wish one day maybe I could learn from Kenny 叔叔 like 学一点 bass， 我也有兴趣想 learn some bass. Yeah.
Never too late. It's never too late.
Hello, I'm Joy. I learned, like you, I learned piano ever since I was little, and I hated every second, every minute till I was in junior high. I guess that got really, when I was in 5th grade, and when I saw another sister who played piano with a lot of joy and a lot of passion, and that really changed my life. And I know that playing piano, why my mom is forcing me to learn piano, how I can use the instrument to praise the Lord.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic.
My name is Ida. So I play computer.
You know that you can play lots of music just with
I know some piano. Yeah, that's all I know. That's it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Down to this right here. Piano? Yeah, we saw you this morning.
大学班，然后我会弹吉他、钢琴、然后我现在是伴奏。
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
My name is Anthony. I joined a marching band when I was in elementary school. I never liked it. My parents forced me into it because of the extra credit and scholarship. And so then I stopped. And then later on, I saw the pricing that was in the church back then. So I really liked it. That's why I joined you to learn guitar and more instruments now.
What did you play in band again? What did you play?
I play a little bit trumpet,
Nice.
and I do clarinet too. Yeah.
Wow, woodwind and brass. Well done. I never knew anyone that did both. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jonas.
Sing, yeah.
Yeah, 我伴唱。
伴唱。
没有，你有力的。
今天他有力。
今天主唱。
所以伴唱 is backup and
Backup, yeah.
leading is
主唱。
主唱. See, I'm learning to 主唱. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Joanna. I wish I could play instruments, but I learned probably a few months. My mom did force me, so I regret it. But I joined a church choir since I'm 12 years old until now. The funny thing is, my husband, my two sons, they play instruments, and I sing.
That's perfect. Perfect family dynamic. Let's go around back and then finish up this.
I'm Dave.
Yeah.
I play computer as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, very needed in this.
I learned piano since I was a child.
Yeah.
Of course, 5 parents until like 7, 8.
Yeah.
But in order to prepare the exam in Taiwan, I didn't go to.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So a bit of piano.
My name is Howard. I'm the other hockey player.
Okay.
Okay. Basically, I would like to come here and to learn from you guys and listen for my kids. So you guys are good models, so I will learn something new from you guys.
That's great.
嗨，我叫 Fiona，我是主唱。
Okay, yeah, 主唱, yeah, lead, right?
Yay.
Yay.
我是科欣，之前有学过一段时间的小提琴，但是并没有学过。
Yeah. And everyone knows Uncle Kenny, right? It sounds like he's the resident teacher, right? Uncle, can you play everything, right?
Yes.
Except the piano.
Except the piano. Okay. Now, real quick, I need to just do some stats taking. So, raise your hand if you play any piano at all. Any 1 month, 1 year, 10 years. Just raise your hand so I have an idea.
Higher.
Yeah. So most of us, right? Like more than half. And then, what about guitar? Any? Raise your hand if you play or want to play guitar, both like bass and acoustic. Okay. And then drums. Can you raise your hand? Play a bit. Want to play? Okay.
你是这样吗？
Yeah.
Johnny 举手，要抓痒。
Yeah, so I just need to know, it just helps me to know what, so it's what I guess. It's most of us have a piano background because we have an Asian background. And then quite a few guitar players, and then also drums is always in Asian, it's too noisy, too loud, so no one ever wants to do it. But I get that, okay? Thank you for sharing. Now, I'm going to say over and over and again, there's this one idea. If you want to learn, it is never too late to learn. And I don't care if you are 10 years old or 20 years old or 100 years old. I don't care if you think you're past the age where it's of any value for you to learn. It's never too late to learn, no matter how much or how little. And no matter how fast or how slowly you learn. You can, maybe you can take a long vacation and just take lessons and practice for hours every day. Or maybe you're really busy in life right now because you're studying or raising children or work is stressful and you can only pick up an instrument once or twice a month and play around with it. I don't care. Just do it if you want to and have fun. Let me tell you why. So there was this year I had 2 different pictures of worshiping God on earth, okay? So my church in Australia is what they call a multi-congregational church. So we have 5 services, and they're all in 5 different sites, and we meet. All of them start about either 9 or 9:30 in the morning. Each one of them, the smallest congregation is about 50. The largest, which is ours, is about 150. So once a year, the whole church, all 5 congregations come together to have a combined service. And when we do that, we rent out the auditorium of a local girls' high school. So I think it was in March of this year. And it was just a service. We had a guest preacher who was from the United States. You might have heard of him. His name is Mark Deaver. He's somewhat of a celebrity because he's written books and he goes and preaches. He's not a normal Sunday preacher. We invited him to preach. There were, on the stage, kind of along the ground, there were Christmas lights, not like green and red, but just like those white lights. In Australia, they call them fairy lights. They also had this big wooden, so our church is called Cornerstone, right? So they had this big wooden thing printed out that said Cornerstone. And then they had these jars all along the stage with rocks in it and candles in each one. It was beautiful. It was magnificent. And the band, they were the best band I had ever heard that were not professionals. Yeah, I mean, like they weren't paid. They were just volunteers, okay? Later I asked, okay, since I'm pretty new to this church, I knew, a lot of the names, but not all the names. And I asked, who played the drums? Who played the guitar and stuff? The drummer was outstanding. He was possibly one of the best drummers I'd ever heard live. And the lead guitarist had some semi-professional experience in vocaling, in singing and stuff like that. It was a magnificent production. It was a church of about 500 or 600, and out of that 500 or 600, there were many skilled musicians, and they were the best of each position, okay? If I had put my hand up, I probably would have been 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th piano. The first 9 had to die before they asked me to come and play. So it was a wonderful music experience. Now, after that service, I started thinking about, worship in general in church. And then I started thinking about 2005, okay? The summer of 2005, I went on a missions trip to Taiwan, and with my father actually, and a few other people from Boone Church where we all used to go. And there was just a small team, and we had a Sunday service. I think it was our first Sunday there. Now, memory's not too clear, okay? And there was only about 10 or 15 of us, and most of them were either long-term or short-term missionaries. And we had one person on guitar, okay? And then I remember, let me tell you, because I had already learned a bit of guitar, but I was very fresh. I had only been playing guitar for 2 or 3 years or something, and it wasn't my first instrument. And they said, we have this ministry thing with kids at this primary school. Why don't we do some singing and teach them some worship music? And I was like, okay, this is great, but I don't have a guitar. And they're like, well, we can find you a guitar. Someone will have one. And so they produced a guitar for me. And that guitar was older than my father. And it was on the verge of falling apart. The wood was actually splintering, and it didn't sound good. The strings hadn't been changed probably in a few years. And you can see the rust. Like when strings get old, you can see the rust because the nice finish comes away. It was not a nice guitar. It's probably one of the worst guitars I'd ever played. But when we sang worship, we sang the worship songs with kids in a simple, school classroom in Taipei. Not nearly as nice as this room. Everything was old, dirty, worn down. Looked like it'd been lived in for quite a while. Now I want to ask you this question. I just gave you two pictures of different kinds of God's people worshiping God. Which picture more accurately reflects the state of the church today? This is a tricky question. Let me see if I can rephrase it. Which picture is more fitting for God's people today? Well, I think that you remember when Paul says to, I think it was the Philippians, it could be the Colossians, I think. Someone tell me if you know. He said to the Colossians, your citizenship is not here. Your citizenship is in heaven. Do you guys remember that Bible passage? He says, where do you belong, you Christians? Where is home for you? Where is your home country, your hometown? It's not here. It's not the United States. It's not even the planet Earth as we know it now. Your citizenship is in heaven. And then later, Peter, in 1 Peter, he speaks to the Christians scattered all throughout the Roman Empire. And what does he say to them? What does he call them? Does anyone know? Let's look, actually. Why don't we look at the Bible real quick? 1 Peter chapter 2. Verse 11. Ooh, actually, no, it's not good one. Yeah, let's just go with that. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11. Just help your neighbor to get there when if they need help. So I'm going to read it in English, and then you can read it aloud in Chinese. It says in English, "Dear friends, I urge you, as foreigners and exiles, to abstain from sinful desires which wage war against your soul." So he tells them, so what I want to focus on is what he calls his friends, his brothers and sisters in Christ. He says, they are foreigners and exiles. Can someone, what is that in Chinese? Is that a good translation of foreigners and exiles?
Travelers.
Travelers. Good enough, right? As travelers, as people who don't belong here, as people who are just passing along. Now, I want you to understand that you have to, what we're doing now is setting a foundation for your worship and the quality of the music that you play. Before you can before it's worth picking up an instrument and learning and playing, you have to see yourself the way that God wants you to see yourself here, right now, in this world. He says you are travelers or foreigners, exiles to our world. So we don't belong here. We are merely passing by on a mission trip, okay? Now what that means is that one of these days we will get home. Or actually, more accurately, one of these days Jesus will return and he will complete his kingdom, and then this will be our true home. Okay? Now, so during this time, since this is all temporary and the world around us, the Bible says, will pass away one day, we should be used to having things that are not new, things that are old, things that are not fine in quality. We should not be used to playing thousands of guitars and instruments that cost thousands of dollars. We should be used to playing whatever we can get our hands on. Okay? The long-term missionary that was there with me in Taiwan, I said, look, I just need any guitar, whatever you can provide me. They just asked around, and somebody had a guitar. I don't know where it came from. Maybe someone bought it a long time ago and wanted to learn and then never got a chance to learn, and somehow in 2005 it ended up in my hands. We should get used to just making do with whatever we have. That is the quality of our worship right now. The quality of our worship should remind us that this is only temporary. One day, things will be complete. And when Jesus returns, that's when everything will be of the highest quality, all right? In you know, like the picture of the streets being paved with gold, that will be like, this will not be good enough quality when Jesus returns. The biggest party, the largest stadium on earth, wherever it is, whether you know, like here or in London or whatever, will not be big enough, good enough. The biggest speakers, the most expensive microphones, those instruments, nothing we see on earth will be good enough when Jesus finally returns. But that hasn't happened yet. Not yet. That is coming for us now. For us one day, but not now. Now, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because when I was younger, I had a lot of problems with, I guess, I don't know how you would translate it in Chinese, but it's called perfectionism. It's when... Yeah, is that good? Yeah. You all kind of have an idea of what that is, right? You want everything to be perfect, and you always have this fear that who you are and what you can bring is not good enough. Well, I want to tell you that if you feel that your skills are inadequate, your voice isn't beautiful enough, you make too many mistakes on the piano or the guitar, or maybe if you think that you are too old and your fingers are no longer nimble enough and skillful enough to play these instruments. That's not true. Your current state, wherever you are, whether it's your first day to learn or your 1000th day to learn your instrument, is a present reminder that we are all still just foreigners and aliens. This doesn't have to be perfect, okay? All this has to do is facilitate genuine, sincere worship of God from the heart. Sincere worship of God, it can be played with a piano that's out of tune. It can be played with a guitar that's missing a string. It's okay. Now, I think that, so I've been thinking about this, right? And if I were to plant a church or to lead a church, and I had some decisions to make about the quality of my band, like my music team, I would probably make it so that 51 weeks out of 52 in the year, we have just amateurs playing and serving, regardless of skill level. And I would encourage the whole church, the whole congregation, to sing sincerely out of their hearts, even if the pianist and the guitarist, you know, aren't in tune, or if the drummer plays too fast and then suddenly we're all singing like 1,000,000 miles an hour. I would encourage that to be what it looks like 51 weeks out of the year. And then 1 week a year, I would want the best of the best. I would want to have the most skilled musicians that I can find who attend my service, who are believers. And I would want them to, well, put on a show, put on a performance, and make everything top-notch quality, because I want my people to have a taste, a little foretaste of the amazing quality of worship that's going to come when Jesus returns. But only once a year. I want them to hear how good it can be and not be satisfied and think, this is not good enough, I want more. Because then they will long for Jesus' return. I want them to long for Jesus' return. But 51 weeks out of the year, I want them to remember that they are missionaries. I want them to remember that they're foreigners and exiles, and they just make do with whatever they have, whatever they've got, however good they are is good enough. So the first thing I want to say to you is, wherever you are right now, whatever you have, whatever skills you have, if in your heart you seek to worship God and sing and make music in praise to Him, that is good enough. That is good. Okay, any questions or anything to say? Cool. Well, let's pray. No, just kidding. I haven't actually even started yet. I just thought of that. Don't worry, we'll get to the practical stuff. Let me see what's important. Okay, yes. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the theology of music, now of singing, okay? So theology basically, in other words, I want to share a little bit about what the Bible tells us about why we sing and do music on Sundays, okay? Let me ask, who knows what modern art is? Okay, so there's classical art and there's modern art. So it's sort of two general terms. Both of them are what you would call high art, okay? Things that you would see in a museum, okay? But the only difference is sort of like time period, okay? So classical art tends to be a little bit older. So has anyone heard of Michelangelo's statue of David? Okay, so I don't actually know when it happened, when he made it, but it's a magnificent marble statue of David, taller than any of us, of course, like giant-sized, that he carved out of pure, fine, high-quality marble. That's an example of classical art. Okay, modern art would be things that have been made more recently, in about the last 100 or 200 years. Okay. Classical art is the kind of art that you would have heard of, okay? So who's heard of the name Bach? Anyone? Bach? Yes? No? Beethoven? Yes? This is what would be known as classical art, okay? Last week, actually no, just earlier this week, Joe and I and my brother Andrew, we went to go visit a modern art museum. Have you heard of the Guggenheim? It's that one that looks like a vanilla ice cream. It's just like a swirl, right? So in the Guggenheim, you won't find anything like Michelangelo's statue of David. You won't find any paintings that you might picture, like Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, you know, the smiling girl. You're not going to find any of that stuff, the famous things that you will see online and on TV and stuff, because it's modern art. It's more obscure. It's made by more recent contemporary artists. Okay. Now, the last time we came to New York, we visited this other museum called the Metropolitan Museum of Art. That one you might have heard of. That's the one where you're going to see more famous things, okay? But Joe wanted to try modern art, so we went to the Guggenheim. And I was so bored. I cannot even begin to tell you how bored I was. Do you know how bored I was? When Abby had to change her diaper, I said, I'll do it. I'll take her, I'll find the bathroom. You guys go enjoy the art, okay? And then I changed her diaper, and then we went into the cafe, and we just sat there. And Abby played on the chair, and I played on my phone. Because I would rather play on my phone, scrolling through Facebook, than see modern art. Something changed in the last few hundred years in what you would call high art, okay? There was a change in quality, change in the nature of art, okay? And you don't have to be a professional artist to know that, okay? I'm not really into art in any way, but you can sense the change. And it's true of visual art, like paintings and sculptures, but also of classical music. If you listen to classical music today, it sounds different, okay? I mean, just try this for a second, okay? Google Statue of David. I want you all to look up the Statue of David and just have a look real quick. This is going to be good, okay? Just take 10 seconds, look it up on Google Images, and I want you to just, even if you don't like art, you can appreciate how how much work went into that, and why it looks so and how amazing. You cannot do that, okay? It's not anybody can do that, okay? You have to have skill and gifts, natural gifts that God has given you, right? Okay, has everyone had a look? I'm not going to check, just make sure you have a look. Now, Jo took a picture for me of one of her favorite artworks that she saw at the Guggenheim. I'm going to pass around my phone, all right? This is a picture that was taken 5 days ago. It's in the museum in Manhattan right now, okay? The artwork is called Atmosphere, okay? And you can scroll, okay? I'll show you. You can scroll. I'm going to pass my phone around. I want you to have a look at what it looks like. Why don't you describe what it looks like?
Nothing.
Huh?
Nothing.
Atmosphere.
Atmosphere.
氛围吧。
好翻译。
Do you even know what you're looking at? Not really, right? I wonder if you can find it if you Google it.
You can find it.
As the phone, okay, good. As the phone's coming around, or as you look it up on Google, that's it, Link, that's it. Okay, I'll describe to you what it looks like, okay? It's a square canvas, all right? Perfectly square canvas, and on it is nothing. Just blank, just white, a white canvas, okay? This is a professional work of art done by a modern artist who lived in the 20th century. She only died in 2012, okay? And this is considered high art that is hanging up in a very well-known, worldwide known museum in New York City, one of the greatest art capitals of the world, okay? What happened? What happened to art? I have a theory, okay? And the theory is that art follows the deepest beliefs and philosophical commitments of the people of that time. What you most deeply believe, what you most love and care about, the things that your people, the things that your culture most cherishes, most fears, most worships, that's what you turn into art. Art is simply a method, a medium for expressing your culture, expressing the content of what you believe. Now, I won't go into too much detail here, but I think this is really interesting, and it would be good for you guys to know. At some point in the last 300 or 400 years in Western society, the content of our deepest commitments, of our deepest, most preciously held beliefs changed. The character of what we care about the most, what we most believe about our world and the things around us, took a drastic shift. And I'm talking about philosophy. So this is questions like, who are we? Where did we come from? What is our purpose here? What brings us joy? What do we live for? What is good? What is evil? What are these things? Okay? These are the kind of questions that fuel and drive our art, and that sort of inform what we as a people think is beautiful. Now, roughly around the time that our art started, well, getting really sucky, our society started shifting from a society where everyone believes, it's assumed that everyone believes in God, to a society where that is no longer assumed. That's no longer there. In Western society, for the longest time, hundreds and hundreds of years, you could be a good or bad person. You could be a noble or a thief. You could be you could be a hero or a criminal. But it's assumed that for the most part, everyone believed in God. And not only that, everyone believed that God is the one that created the whole world and everything in it, right? And the whole purpose of human existence is to worship Him and give glory to Him. Now, you could be a bad person and you could choose not to do that, but you never stopped believing that, okay? And society was held together by that belief. Today, that's no longer true, okay? And today, our art reflects that. Do you know, I mentioned Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, okay? He's one of the greatest living composers. What's something that he did? I can't remember off the top of my head. That's him, right? Yeah. What else is really famous by him? You know, all your phone ringtones, there's always going to be something by Bach, right? Do you know what his day job was? For a time period, he was the music director for his church in Germany. And what did the choir sing every week? Whatever Bach wrote, okay? He was actually employed by the church. So today we think of him as a classic musician, but he was the Uncle Kenny of his church back in his day. Or I should say Uncle Kenny is your Bach. Same thing, so, but back then, what is the subject of Michelangelo's David? Do you know which David that is? The David that we just talked about in today's sermon, right? What do you know, the Sistine Chapel? First of all, what is the Sistine Chapel? It's a chapel. It is a house of worship. And one of the most famous works of art in all of human history is on the ceiling there. It is also done by Michelangelo. What does it depict?
Bible scenes.
Sorry?
Bible scenes. Right?
Bible scenes. Dozens of them. Bible scenes. And what is the biggest, the centerpiece of all of that?
Creation.
That's right. God and man. God and Adam. It's that famous one, right? There was a time... What I'm trying to say is... The purpose of art in the classical age, the classical artists always had God as their subject because they believed that art had more purpose than just to be pretty. Art's purpose was to magnify God's glory. Art's purpose was to remind us with beauty that God is the God of the universe. Art's purpose was to bring out the beauty of his created world. And art's purpose was to highlight humanity's special place amongst God's creation. Okay? And when art did that, it was beautiful. It was memorable. It was the kind of thing that lasts hundreds of years and that we still go into museums to see today. Well, what is the purpose of art today? What is the purpose of modern art? It depends on who you ask. And there's many answers for this, and I'm not going to go into too much detail. But I think that there's in a way, modern art reflects the things that we care about most today. And if I could summarize it in one word, it would be politics. Now, I know politics is a different thing to everybody, right? But when I look at the kind of art that's being created by artists who are still living now, their purpose is no longer to glorify God and to highlight the fact that we are all creatures created by an amazing, magnificent creator. Its purpose is to tell stories that are apart from God and talk of concerns that have nothing to do with God. And you can see that when you go into a modern museum, okay? A couple of years ago, there's this, in Sydney, they have this art exhibition. They call it Sculptures by the Sea, okay? There's this beautiful string of beaches in Sydney, okay? 3 or 4 beaches, and you can walk all the way down. It takes about an hour or 2 to just walk all the way down. And for 2 weeks, every September, they do a free public art exhibition where they put sculptures and other artworks, okay? And every year we try to make it because I think it is such an interesting contrast. Because when I'm going south, I look to the left and I see the ocean, the mighty, endless ocean that God created, that God put there. All right, that is terrible and terrifying. We cannot fathom it. We cannot measure it in any way. I see the beach. There's no one. I don't care if you're a summer or winter person. When you look at a beach, it makes you feel good. That's why we put up pictures of beaches. It is beauty in and of itself. And then I look to the right and I look at all the sculptures that our modern artists create. There is this one that I'll never forget. Okay, it's a shop, like a convenience store, like a newsstand where you can buy candy and newspapers. But it's made of garbage. Okay? I can't remember the name of it. You could probably Google it. This was 2018, okay? The whole shop is made of garbage. And when you go to what they're selling, there's things that they found in the ocean, okay? Fish hooks, Band-Aids, plastic straws, Starbucks cups, things like that, okay? And the whole point was, the message was, oh, we're destroying our earth and stuff like that, okay? Now, I want you to understand, I don't have a problem with environmentalism, okay? I think we are destroying our earth, and I think that it's the Christian's duty as stewards of God's creation to care about the environment, recycle and all that. That's not the problem that I have. The problem is that this is an art installation. This art is supposed to inspire in me thoughts of the beautiful, the noble, the honorable, the glorious. This art installation is making me feel guilty about not recycling. What kind of art is that? Whereas, here's my point. When you remove God, when you remove the purpose of art, which is to glorify God and magnify the beauty of His creation, you are literally left with garbage. So I wrote in here, why do we need to know this? Because it's important that you understand that everything good and beautiful that you experience in your life is because of your Creator. Every good and lovely experience that you cherish is because there is an intelligent, good, glorious God who loved you and created you, breathed you into existence so that you may delight in Him. Without God, music would not have its beauty, food would not have its taste, and none of the things that you do in life would have its joy. Let me just tell you one more story. Do you know I worked out what Abby hates more than anything in the world? It's when I play piano. I learned it the hard way. It was so sad. One time, she was a bit younger, it was a few months ago. We were sitting in front of, we had nothing to do. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I thought I would just play some worship songs. It was a wonderful time. We don't do it as much as we should because we're so busy, right? And I thought, oh, this would be so great, family worship, right? And Joe's about to come into the living room. She's just doing some cleaning in the kitchen. So I had Abby and I put her down and I played some of my most favorite worship songs. And I was singing with such joy, with such contentment in my heart. And I didn't even hear because I was singing and playing so loudly. And then I stopped and I turned around and Abby was full on bawling sitting behind me, just crying loud, like, when my dad holds her and then I go away and then she cries out loud. It's like that, okay? Why? It's because when I'm playing piano, my back is turned away from her. So from her perspective, she's this big and she's looking up at me. And I'm facing away. And for a child, there is nothing worse than when their father turns away from them, okay? She's not thinking, oh, hey, my father's ignoring me, but at least the music is good. She doesn't care about the music. All that she cares is that her connection to her father is gone at this moment, okay? I want you to think about that. When you play, when we sing here, the joy and beauty and pleasure of singing does not come from the skill of your pianist or the quality of your guitars or your instruments. It doesn't come from how new or big or powerful your speakers are. The real pleasure of singing in worship comes simply from the fact that from your heart you are glorifying your Creator and enjoying Him fully. So I will say once again, I don't care if today's the first day you decided to learn to play an instrument, and I don't care if you've been playing for years and years and you just never seem to get better, and I don't care if you think that you're not good and you make too many mistakes. You are not, it's not about that. It's if you are singing and playing joyfully from your heart, that is the music that pleases God. And that is the music that will most encourage and serve your brothers and sisters in the church. Any questions so far? Any part that I spoke too quickly and need some clarification? Okay, so I'll just sum this part up. What I'm trying to say is that your skill is secondary. I would much rather have a music player that makes lots of mistakes and that's not good at pacing and timing, but sings joyfully and authentically from the heart, than to be a skilled musician who plays without knowing God. Now, I want you to know that not everyone, not all worship leaders agree with me on this. I just want you to be aware of this. There are some churches who, the way they choose to run their music team is they want to employ the best musicians, and sometimes that means employing professional musicians, okay? Because from their point of view, they want to facilitate the highest quality music so that the congregation can then sing joyfully without the distraction of someone being out of tune or getting the words wrong or things like that, okay? And that's fine, okay? I'm not here to argue with them or anything. I just want you to understand, I think that personally, music with errors is much more truthful to how our worship should be done today. We are not professionals. We are all just worshipers, aren't we? I mean, when Jonas goes up there on Sundays, he is not distinct and separate from the rest of the congregation. He is a member of the congregation. So why do we put him up there? Well, we put him up there because at that moment he is serving the rest of his brothers and sisters by leading us to sing together and in sync, right? So that's the only difference. He is there to serve in that particular capacity. And because we are not professionals, whatever level of skill we are, that God honors that, okay? And we should keep practicing and seeking to improve our craft, because practicing and working and training is also part of how we honor God. But no one here is perfect. That's okay. Ooh, okay, one last thing, and then I'll say my second point, and then that's it. That's all I have for programming, okay? And then I want to hear what you guys want to talk about, okay? So I've been trying to encourage you, because I have a sense that more of us here, in your opinion, you feel you have less experience than more. No one is here as a professional thinking, oh, I'm too good, right? But I think that this is also a warning for us as well. Just as it's an encouragement that my skills are good enough. It's also a warning that God seeks the kind of worshipers who worship from his heart. Okay? So in the Gospel of John, chapter 5, Jesus is having an argument with this Samaritan woman, with a woman. She's from a neighboring country to Jesus. They're sort of like different cultures and people. They're actually having a theological argument. Okay, they're discussing disagreement they have about worship, right? Because the woman, the Samaritan woman, she says, you Jews, you worship, I think it was the temple, you worship in the temple. We Samaritans, we believe that the center of our worship is this mountain, right? And Jesus, he doesn't say, he's a Jew, right? But what does he say? He doesn't say, oh, no, the temple is the most important. We have to worship in the Jewish temple or else it's not authentic. He says, a time is coming and is now here when true worshipers of God will worship in spirit and truth. Right? So what does spirit and truth mean? Well, later on in the Gospel of John, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So Jesus says, I am truth. Right? And then a few chapters after that, in chapter 14, he says, I will send you the Comforter. I will send you the Holy Spirit. He is also the sender of the Holy Spirit that dwells in our heart. So when he says people will, the true worshipers worship in spirit and in truth, what he's saying simply is that true worshipers worship me, Jesus Christ, from their heart. Doesn't matter if it's on a mountain or in a temple or here or that church or on the street. True worship comes from worshipers of Jesus. Okay? So just as skill doesn't matter, where your relationship with Jesus is matters. Let me rephrase that. Just as your skill doesn't matter as much, how whether or not you are a follower of Jesus who seeks to honor him in your whole life, that matters. So one of the questions that Cookie asked me to talk about is what are some common mistakes that worship leaders make? I think one of the most common mistakes that worship leaders make is they think that their job, their main way to serve God is through what they bring musically. But I think that the kind of worship leaders that are most qualified, most fit to serve and lead their brothers and sisters at church are the ones who don't just serve in music, but serve in all of life as well. The ones who don't just worship Jesus when they're holding a guitar or when they're sitting in front of a piano, but those who spontaneously burst into song because they just randomly thought of something that they want to praise God for. Now, I want to confess to you, many times I forget what I'm telling you right now. And there are so many times when I don't practice what I preach. And I'll give you an example of that. Sometimes I get tempted to feel more like I'm worshiping God when I'm playing an instrument, or when the music is really good. You know, last week when you were all at retreat, Joe and I, we went with my younger brother to visit his church. Oh, their music was fantastic, amazing. I asked my brother to look up the songs for me because I thought the lyrics were amazing and I wanted to bring it back to Sydney. And it was so good, it almost brought me to the verge of tears. And sitting there in the church, in the pews, I felt so connected to God, right? I was singing these words about me, about my weakness as a human being, and how Christ's strength is enough for me, and how his grace is enough to redeem me, and how before God I am righteous, right? And then there's this other song that was the subject of the song was about persevering, right? And about about having patience, kind of like what I preached to you today, having patience and honoring God, because one day Jesus will return and he'll be king, right? And there's this line, soon mission will pass and only glory remains. Something like that. I can't remember the exact line. And I was like, oh, and I remember in my heart, I feel so worshipful right now. But you know what? I actually think that, thinking about how I felt then, I actually think that it was wrong to think that I was closer to God at that time. Because I feel like I confused the emotional feeling of listening to good music with the deeper joy of honoring God and feeling joy that I am His child. Okay? I actually think that yes, when there's a really, like, we all feel connection to music, and when we listen to good music, our heart leaps, right? We want to dance and all that stuff, right? But I actually think that when that's not happening, your connection to God, your closeness to Him, does not change at all whatsoever. In fact, I might even argue that when you are serving Him and obeying Him, and there's no celebration, there's no fanfare, there's no pretty lights, there's no pretty beautiful music, just doing ordinary, mundane things to obey Him, that is the time when you are also most deeply worshiping God. Okay? So if you have a family, okay, you go home, and it's 11 p.m., and everyone's showered and gone to bed and unwinding and get ready, and then you see that in the kitchen there's still a sink full of dirty dishes, and because you're the one who then goes, okay, I haven't showered yet, it's okay, I'll do the dishes. That kind of service and love should makes you as close to God as if when we are singing and worshiping and there's excitement and the atmosphere is good. Okay? And when you the offertory time, you're doing, let's say you do your budgeting monthly, okay? You figure out your income, you figure out your expenses, okay? And then that's the time when you figure out what you spend your money on, and you go, there's this missionary that wants to go to this country and needs financial support. And you're like, oh, okay, well, we still haven't paid off the house yet, but if we cut back here and we shorten our vacation by a few more days this year, then we can support this missionary this year. That's really mundane, okay? Nobody here is getting training to, you're not going to go up there and lead and do your budget and finances from the pulpit, okay? Nobody stands in front of their brothers and sisters in Christ to do that, okay? But that is as glorifying and honoring to God as it is when you song lead, okay? So when you are serving by playing piano or playing guitar or playing drums, it feels more important because you're standing in front of other people and other people are looking at you. And so you feel that this is more important work for God. I need you to understand that's not true. The important work you do for God is everything you do to worship Him. Everything you do to offer your life as a living sacrifice to Him. Sometimes on Sunday mornings, if your name is Jonas, that means you do stand in front of other people, right? But if your name is Anthony and it's a Wednesday evening and you're doing your budgeting, you also have a wonderful opportunity to worship God. Or if your name is Rita and you're at home and your roommates and your family didn't do the dishes or there's laundry to be done, that is an equal opportunity to honor God. Do you understand what I'm saying? You understand what I mean? Before we get to the skill stuff, which we'll do pretty soon, we have to have this foundation. We have to understand this foundation for music training and serving in music. And it is not very much different to anything else that needs to be done in church. Let me ask you, what else needs to be done in church? I don't really know, and it's different for every church. This is only my 3rd week here, okay? But most churches have kind of similar things that need to be done. They need to be kept clean. The chairs need to be stacked. The food needs to be brought in. The garbage needs to be taken out. If you have special skills in finance, the church's finances need to be done. If you have technical skills, who plays the computer again? There's one guy there, one guy there. If you have special skills in that, it's the 21st, it's 2019 now. What's the biggest problem? When the church Wi-Fi goes out, right? All these kind of things, every way that we serve God, that is worshiping God, okay? Let me read for us. Let's go to Romans chapter 12. I think this Bible passage really well summarizes what I'm trying to explain to you here. Romans chapter 12, just the first 2 verses. Okay, we all there? Can we read that together out loud? Do you want to do that in English or Chinese? I've been listening to you in Chinese all day. Why don't we, if you can, why don't we read it together in English? Is that okay? Okay.
Read first.
Romans chapter 12 from verse 1. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Okay. Now, one thing I've noticed. This doesn't bother me that much, but there are other pastors and leaders I know that bothers them, okay? It's the use of the English word worship, okay? How do we usually use the word worship? When we say worship, it usually means on Sundays when we gather together to sing and to listen to the preaching and stuff, right? Or another way that we use the word worship is specifically about singing. Isn't that right? When we talk about, when we say, let us worship God, we mean let us grab some instruments and sing songs of worship to God. Now, this doesn't bother me that much, but I know there are some pastors who say, that is wrong, okay? Worship is nothing to do with singing. Worship is simply when you live your life in a way that is pleasing to the God who saved you, the God who sent Jesus to die for you. So pastors would say, when you sing praises to God, that's worship. But when you do the dishes, that's worship. And when you go to work, that's worship. When you all that stuff, your whole life, as you live in pleasing to God, it's worship. Why do they say that? It's because of this verse. Because he says, in view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. And when he says your body, he means it's just like for us to understand our whole life, whatever we do, not just Sunday, but also Monday to Friday and Saturday as well. And what does he call it? He calls it your true and proper worship. Or if you have an older version of the Bible, I think it says very similar to that, your act of worship to God. Right? So if you call music worship, I don't mind, it's okay. There are other people that will say, no, that's wrong, you have to change it. I don't think it's a big deal. Words are flexible anyway. But let's hope to remember, as we do music, let us be encouraged to have every aspect of our life be lived in obedience to God. Let me just give you one more thing to think about, and then one more application point to think about. This will be more for leaders, like the music, I don't know who is the music leader. This might be a little bit more for you, but you can all hear this, okay? So last year was 2018 was the last year that I actually was the music lead, the leader of the music ministry at church, right? And I had this, one of the main responsibilities of a music leader is to organize the roster. You know what I mean? Like who plays what each given week, right? And part of that responsibility is also to work out who is ready to play, to serve by playing and stuff, right? And I had this problem. This problem was, well, one aspect, the smaller aspect, was who is skillful enough, okay? So our music team is actually, maybe our total number of musicians was probably about the number of people in this room right now, okay? And we had mostly pianists and guitarists, just like you guys. And we had about 2 or 3 guitarists that were really good, that were confident and could play any given week without having to practice too much. We had the same, about 2 or 3 drummers as well, who was pretty good. And then we had only a couple of pianists who was that good, and we had a lot of pianists. Almost everyone played the piano as well, but most of them were like you, they had a classical background. And you know that the music we play, it's a little bit more pop-based, so it's based on your chords, and so a lot of them kind of struggled to change into a different category, right? So one of my responsibilities was to mix and match the musicians together so that each week there would be a team that was a mix of confident musicians who could guide and teach and improve the musicians with less experience, okay? That was not a big deal. That was not so much a big deal. But there was another aspect that really did my head in that was a bit trickier. The tricky part, this was, who is mature enough as a Christian to serve and play on stage, okay? Now, I want to ask you guys, but what ideas, what theories do you usually have? Well, most churches, they usually don't think too much about it. And if you don't think too much about it, your usual solution is let's just get the most mature that we have, okay? And if we have really committed Christians, we'll start with them first. And then if they're not so committed, then we'll go to the next level, the ones that miss church every now and then. And if you don't even really have musicians that are that, we'll just get whoever we can, okay? So you just, go down. I don't think that's a very good strategy. I don't think that's very biblical or very thought out, right? And we were thinking, well, what does it even mean to be mature enough to serve, okay? And I spoke with our pastor about that. And the solution that we came up with, I hadn't really seen in any other church. We decided not to look at the problem as if we decided not to ask the question, who is mature enough to serve everyone? Because that's kind of based on works, right? It's kind of like auditioning. Like you have to submit your life resume, and if you're good enough, then we'll let you play. Maybe you have perfect attendance in church this year. And you give thousands of dollars to the poor and you tithe every week. Okay, you're good enough, you can play piano for us. But the problem is, that's actually a message that preaches against God's grace, isn't it? So we flipped it around, and instead of asking who's mature enough, we asked, how can the ministry of music ministry serve to grow people with musical talent? Okay? Instead of looking at it as who's qualified to do this, we used music ministry actually as a ministry, okay? And the reason why you can do that is because God says that a mature Christian is one who serves, right? You can't, it doesn't make, it's nonsense to call yourself a mature Christian if you do not use your time and resources and skills to serve and love other people, right? The basic definition of Christian maturity is that you live like Jesus does. You consider the needs of other people before you consider your own, right? So we asked ourselves, how do we run the music ministry in a way to consider, to allow people to consider the needs of other people before our own? And here's an example, okay? We have a couple of young college students who are on the music team, and their skill-wise was not that bad. I taught them guitar myself, and they didn't have very much experience, but they learned very quickly, okay? And they were good enough so that if they practiced, they wouldn't make any mistakes on a Sunday. In other words, they were good enough, right? But we had this problem. Twice a year, about 2 to 4 times a year, they would stop coming to church for about 2 or 3 weeks. Who knows around what time of the year a college student stops coming to church?
September.
That's right, okay? And that's not very good, right? Because it shows that your priorities are a little bit disordered, right? If you prioritize something over worshiping God with your brothers and sisters in Christ, right? Now, what would you do in this situation? What do we normally do in this type of situation? Well, if you operate by the original model, which is you just get the most mature people to serve, you would say, hey, look, I don't think your maturity is there yet, because we think that God is most honored when we have the most mature people on stage serving our brothers and sisters in Christ. And I kind of understand that, and I get that, right? That makes sense in its own way. So we're going to get Jeff and Bob to do it instead, because they've come to church every week all year, even during finals and whatever, right? But then what do? Then you say to them, okay, what do you say to them? Do you say to them, okay, I need you to attend church a whole year in a row before I allow you to play? Well, that sounds like you're just giving them a bar to reach. You're giving them work to complete in order for them to have the privilege to serve. And I actually don't think that's very biblical. So instead, what we said to them was, I'm going to roster you on during finals week, okay? And I don't care how early you have to start, okay? Start studying, I mean. When is your final? August 13th? Okay, you are going to play on Sunday, August 11th, okay? And that means the week or two before, I'll give you the music, okay? I'll give you, usually I select songs 1 week beforehand. But for you, it's okay. I'll try to select it 2 weeks early. I'll put in extra work so that you have extra time to practice the songs, okay? And I'm going to give the rehearsal date to you way in advance. You have 2 months. It's only June right now. You're going to play in August, okay? Now, you know, because the college told you when your final exam is, and now I'm telling you when your play date is, and it's 2 days apart, okay? Don't mess it up, okay? And no matter what happens, you're going to play on that day, okay? Why did we do this? It's because this is how I think. This is, I think, the best way to use your music ministry to serve and instruct and grow your people in maturity. Okay? I don't want my people to think that they have to be a super Christian in order to have the privilege to play music for God. I want to work with them because I don't care too much about the quality of the music. The music is going to get done one way or another. Let's say my students, all right, I get a whole music team of students, and they all drop the ball, okay, and they all go, sorry Dan, I can't come in because I got to study, or I just, I stayed up until 6 a.m. studying and I'm too tired to go to church, and they just don't show up. What's the worst that can happen? I'll just play a CD, or I'll ask everyone to sing a cappella. I'll just change the songs so that it's songs that everyone knows and we can all just sing by heart, like Happy Birthday. If it's your birthday and you go, oh no, we don't have a guitarist, you don't cancel the birthday, you just let's just sing it, right? Just do that, right? That's okay, because we can just worship God that way. right? No matter whether you have good instruments or bad instruments, okay? But what I'm more concerned about is using music ministry as a way to teach people, a way to teach people that to grow in maturity is to grow in serving God, okay? So if you struggle with church attendance, I'm going to tell you when you're playing. I'm not going to remove you or disqualify you from playing. I'm going to tell you when you're playing, and I'm going to tell you, listen, I'm not just your music teacher, I'm a brother in Christ as well, okay? I'm someone who cares about you spiritually. In this way, music ministry is different to a business. In businesses, companies, things like that, it's a performance or you get fired. That shouldn't be how this is run. Music ministry is just, you must think outside the box. You have to think of another, I'm speaking to leaders now, okay? You have to think of how you can use what you have to accomplish your goal. Your goal, which is always to disciple your people and help them to grow in maturity, okay? So I'm just giving you one example of doing that, okay? I mean, and there's so many different ways. Like if someone, and this did happen, right? Someone came up to me and said, look, you put me on to play guitar for the next 3 months. You know, we do quarterly rosters. But to be honest with you, I'm just going through a rough time in my life, and I'm just struggling with my faith. You know, I'm asking questions about God and about my faith in God that I hadn't never asked before. I'm not going to say, oh, well, you know, you said you had to serve, so, you know, like, I need you to play guitar, or else, you know, I'm not going to have a guitarist, right? I'm going to say, okay, no problem. No worries, no big deal. I'll take care of it. I'll find someone to replace you, okay? I'll get Uncle Ken. He can play for 3 months in a row if he needs to. That's okay, right? And you say, don't even worry about that. I don't want you to think about your music responsibilities right now. I just want you to get the help and the pastoral care that you need to work through the issues of faith that you have right now, okay? So put that out of your mind. Let me take care of it. Why don't you tell me what happened, what you've been thinking about, why you have these questions. Do you see what I mean? Like, you do, your goal is not to always have music every Sunday. Your goal is not to have the best quality music that your church can provide every Sunday. Your goal is to see your music ministry as a ministry and to use your resources, whether it's people or instruments or this building, whatever it is, to use your resources to glorify God and to serve His people. Okay, that's actually the end of my prepared remarks, which honestly went for quite a long time. Does anyone have any questions or follow-ups about this, about anything that we've talked about so far? Okay. All right. Well, how do you want to do this? Let's see. Okay. Do we want to? You know what? I got an idea. Okay. Maybe who has a cell phone number that everyone has? Would it be Uncle Stone or anybody? Like, is there someone with a cell phone number? Because what I'm thinking is, or Shifang, right? If you have any questions, if anyone, I got an idea. I have a temporary mobile cell phone number. So I'll give you my number because my plan will expire in a week, so I don't care if you send me junk. So let me give you my phone number, okay? This isn't my real number, so, but it is for now. And if you have any questions you want to send me, just send it to me. If you're more comfortable writing it in Chinese, that's fine. My phone can read it, and I'll just ask someone to translate, okay? Let me look up my number for you. Sorry, give me a second, okay? 929 306 9214. Did we all get that? 929 306-9214.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, please.
So let's say, like I know you're talking about like how your music skills doesn't really matter, it's your heart that matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you decide if someone comes to you and they want to serve,
Mm-hmm.
but you kind of know maybe they're not ready
Mm-hmm.
to be, I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm asking it correct. Like you're
That's
not
okay.
sure if it would actually benefit them to be on the stage serving like that.
Mm-hmm.
They might not be at the spiritual maturity
Mhm.
yet.
Yeah.
So how do you decide, like, when can someone actually serve?
That's an excellent question. Does everyone understand? Okay. So it's, if I'm, just make sure I've got it right, it's kind of like, I know I've said music, skill doesn't matter, but we still have to decide, how do you decide when this person is ready, right? I will say, ideally, like in terms of like philosophically, like perfectly, music doesn't matter, right? But if you have skilled musicians and unskilled musicians, you're not going to always just put the unskilled musicians, allow them to play, and the skilled musicians never play either. There's always going to have to be a balance, right? And also, I know I'm speaking in terms of principle, but in terms of practical, you can't have someone play so poorly that it just becomes a distraction either, right? Why? Because, well, that's not really honoring to God either, right? So there has to be like, I guess you can call it a ceiling in terms of, a floor in terms of skill for who you get to play. Now you always work with them, right? And you work with them to improve. And me, I always am more eager to put them on stage sooner rather than later, okay? Because our temptation is, I'm never good enough, I'm never good enough, I'm never good enough, right? We have to be perfect because it's human nature, isn't it, right? I'm just saying, you just try to fight against that temptation, fight against that desire. Even if they make a few mistakes, it's okay. Or if they start the song and then they mess up and they have to start over. It's a bit awkward, but it's okay, right? But if they're so poor, like it's their second week of playing piano, and they're so bad that they can't even get through one song at all, maybe let's give it a few more weeks or a few more months, okay? Now, in terms of the question of spiritual maturity, I think the simple answer is don't ask the question, when are they good enough to serve? Ask the question, what will be the best thing for them to grow? Is the opportunity for them to play the best thing for them to grow? Or is it actually better for their maturity for them not to grow for a while, not to play for a while? I'll give you an example, okay? Just like before, if you say, let's say you have been taking lessons from Uncle Kenny for 6 months now, okay, on the guitar, and you know all the chords now. You're not amazing, you know, you're not like Eric Clapton or something, but you can play the chords. You can switch them pretty fast, okay? And more importantly, Uncle Kenny said, every Sunday, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, I will train you, okay? And I want you to come every week, okay? And you make it every single week. And then he says, at the end of the lesson, I want you to go home and I want you to practice these chords. I want you to learn these scales. I want you to study this music theory book and learn the basic keys and time signatures. And you do that. You do all of that, okay? And then, you know, you're meeting and you say, okay, the question is, am I ready or not to play? Because I'm still not very confident. I'm good, but not so good. I think in this situation, I would put them up sooner rather than later. Why? Because through their behavior, through their commitments to show up every week with Uncle Kenny and to practice everything he asked them to practice, I see someone with a heart and a desire to serve and to work hard for the Lord. And in their Bible study, they are attentive, and when the preacher is preaching the sermon, they listen and they take notes and they pray, and they confess, and then the person confesses their sins and seeks to grow, and in general is just displaying a life of growing maturity. I would say sooner rather than later, right? Because I think giving a person in that situation an opportunity to serve is the right thing to do. Now let me give you another example, okay? When I was at our old church, some of you might have been at Boone Church, right? There are lots of serving things that needed to be done, you know, like ushering, like cleaning and sweeping. What else? I can't think of any, like, not just music stuff, right? You know what everyone's favorite thing to do is planning the church retreat, right? Doing the accommodation and the budgeting and stuff like that. There's so many things that needed to be done. But do you know which ministry always had the most volunteers? Well, of course, music ministry. Because in this particular culture, with this particular people at this particular time, the fun, exciting, cool thing to do is to learn to play instruments and to play drums and play piano and to play guitar, because it was fun. It's much more fun than being on the English Pastor Selection Committee. Much more fun. It's not even close, okay? And so if that happens, you get a lot of people who are eager to serve and play because that's what they want to do. And I'll tell you, in that situation, things are a little bit different. I would be much slower. If I was the one running music ministry, I would be much slower to allow people to come on stage because I probably have young Christians. And I'm not saying they're like spiritually immature. I'm just saying this is a temptation where the excitement of playing an instrument might be bigger in their heart than the honor of serving God, right? And do you see how it's, so I guess my answer to your question is, you have to take it on a case by case. And the main question, don't ask, are you mature enough to serve? Ask, what is the best thing for you right now? Or if I could put it another way, I don't know who here are the leaders of this music ministry, but don't see the people in this room as musical assets. Do you understand what I mean? Don't see them as assets. It's like a corporate word, right? As something that has value, okay? See them as disciples of Jesus who need to be discipled to continue obeying Jesus. And if you're the music leader, use the responsibilities and roles and decisions that you have to make. Make all your decisions with that goal in mind, okay? And it's not a science, it's an art, right? It requires you to be prayerful. It requires you to have wisdom, maybe to seek wisdom. And you might make mistakes. I've made plenty of mistakes, okay? But if you have that mindset, it'll give you much more clarity. Does that make sense? Yeah. My phone didn't buzz. Did I pronounce it? No questions. Anyone else? Let me see if I have any more stuff. It's been a while. We've gone for a long time now, so I'm happy to end it pretty soon as well if you guys want. But let me just finish up. There's a few other things, okay? Cookie asked, what are some common mistakes that worship leaders make? I think probably there's two that I'll tell you. One is not preparing enough, okay? When you are playing, now I haven't even asked you guys, like, what is your routine, like when you practice and stuff like that. But I'm sure that you have a routine. You rehearse on this weeknight, and then on the morning, and then the music leader sends the songs out. I don't know how you do it. However you do it, okay? There's always a bit of preparation before you serve on Sunday, okay? So probably one of the easiest mistakes is if you don't prepare enough, okay? I think the funny thing is, the more experience I gained at doing music ministry, the more I made this mistake. Because I kept getting tempted to think, oh, I've done this a million times, it should be really easy, and I send songs out late, or I don't look at it enough, okay? I actually think, funny enough, the less experience you have, like the more new you are, the less you're prone to this because you're so worried that you won't be prepared, right? So this is more of a warning to those who have been doing it for a while. Sometimes life just gets busy. I don't know, if your child gets sick this week and then you have to take care of them, you have to miss work, or work is really stressful, or your finals are coming up, like that's real stress, right? Okay, things like that happen, right? But do your best to avoid the mistake of not preparing enough, okay? The second mistake is actually worrying so much about preparation that you don't allow yourself the chance to worship as you play, okay? And this happens as well. And this can happen to anybody of any level, right? Let's say you practice the songs, but you still don't feel very confident, okay? There's a temptation where you will be so focused on playing right that during that whole time, you forget the whole purpose of it, okay? And let me tell you, when I prepare sermons, right, not the music stuff, I realized one of the things I had to learn was I had to learn to do this and go get a cup of coffee and a slice of cake, okay? Because you can ask whoever saw me last night, you can ask my dad or Joe or whatever. Joe gets it the worst, right, because we live together. Like, I can be so wrapped up, I lose myself into the preparation so much that I forget what the whole point is. I forget what the goal is. And you'll never be perfect. You'll never be prepared enough. So for some of you, maybe a skill that you need to learn is to decide when to stop practicing and to stop thinking about it and to rest, right? You know the creation pattern? God worked 6 days, and then on the 7th day he rested, and then he told us to do that from now on as well. Well, that pattern sort of works itself out in all areas of life as well, okay? And I think we need to learn that skill as well. And for some of us, part of learning that skill is allowing ourselves to make mistakes, okay? I'll give you another common mistake that gets made, okay? I was the worst. It took me a long time to stop doing this. Play guitar and sing, and then play a wrong chord. Make that face, right? Now, I will tell you right now, okay? 85% of the mistakes that you make on an instrument, nobody notices. But if you do this, 100% of the time you do that face, everyone will know you made a mistake. Okay? But even when you do that, or when you feel embarrassed, you go, oh, or you like laugh or whatever, you make, and you let that make you hesitate or in any way. I mean, it's distracting and it's a little bit of a problem. But I think the bigger problem is if you let that bother you, then you're forgetting that's okay. God is okay with your mistakes. And I'll be honest with you, all the absolute, there's no such thing as perfect playing, okay? It took me a long time to realize this. I think maybe Patty, you can confirm, even like the best classical musicians, like classical pianists, they play concertos in front of packed audiences and things like that. They make lots of mistakes as well, but only like the other professionals know when they make a mistake. And even then, it happens so fast that most of the time they don't catch it and they don't even really care. It's just part of how things work, you know? So to summarize, two mistakes to avoid: not preparing enough and worrying so much about being perfect that you don't get to sing joyfully yourself. Now, one of the things that I've noticed that I've been so encouraged by is that the musicians who play as well, they also sing along. The one most obvious is Nathan when he plays the drums, because sometimes you give him a mic. But I think that was my first week, he didn't have a microphone. I could be wrong. But he was still singing, right? He's playing drums and he was still singing. Why? Well, it's because he's not just a leader, he's a worshiper as well, right? And not everyone can play drums and sing. It's not that easy, right? But I think it's very encouraging, and I like seeing people, the musicians who don't have a microphone, to sing as well. Make sure that you sing as well. Make sure that you worship God and sing joyfully as well when you do that, okay? Okay. I think because we have not too many questions, let me just say one last thing. Is that okay? And then we'll call it, and then maybe we have some informal time where people can go home and whatever, okay? The other question that Cookie asked me to talk about is what are some rules for picking songs, okay? How do you do song selection Sunday by Sunday? I have a feeling this won't apply for everyone because most of you are still just learning an instrument, but it's okay. It's good for you to know as well. When I think about song selection, I try to think of having a balanced diet, okay? Like in terms of what I eat, okay? Now, everyone knows that you can't just eat cake and candy every day, morning, lunchtime, and dinner time. Because if you do, you will die very quickly, okay? But the thing that we forget sometimes is that in a balanced, sustainable, healthy lifestyle, you should have some cake and candy, right? Every now and then. Nobody, maybe if you're a supermodel and you have a six-pack, then you have to eat salads every day, and that's all you have to do. But for most of us, we need balance. When you choose songs, it's similar to that as well. There are some songs that are just cake and candy, okay? Do you know that song, gosh, I don't even want to sing it. Years ago, the Over the Mountains and the Sea, your river, and then the chorus goes, I could sing of your love forever. I could sing of your love forever. And then you sing that about 5 or 6 times, and then you realize, oh, I actually can't sing of your love forever. Not if it's this song, okay? That is a cake song, okay? Why? Because the lyrics, what you are singing, there's not much content. There's not much nutritional value. What's nutritional value in Chinese? Yin. What you said, yeah, right. Okay, that's okay. You don't need to have, every song doesn't need to be a green salad. You can have some cake songs, okay? But if you have all cake songs, then you learn nothing about God. And you lose the opportunity to praise Him for all the complexities and all the wonderful things in His, like that He's done for us, okay? You need good nutritional songs as well, okay? And now, what are good nutritional songs? Good nutritional songs are ones where a lot of times the writer was a pastor himself, or he was a theologian. Do you know the song, A mighty fortress is our God, a bulwark never failing, right? That was written by Martin Luther, okay? He is probably one of the most important theologians in the Western Church, okay? When you look at his hymns, not all of them sound nice or are top lyrical nature, but because he studied the Bible really well, the songs that he writes reflects how deeply he understands God, how deeply he understands salvation, okay? Now, if you select songs, you want to try to aim for a balanced diet, okay? What's a good percentage? What's a good proportion? I can't tell you, okay? Because, well, first of all, I don't actually know your song list that well, okay? It's different. It's a cultural difference, right? The songs that I sing are different to the songs that you sing, okay? But a good principle is try to think, well, which one is cake, which one is salad, okay? Maybe this one is a steak. Not too good, not too bad, okay? Right? And just try to aim for good balance, good depth, okay? And another really important thing, and this is another area where I was not very good at, but I really want you to work hard on this. Keep searching for new songs, okay? Can I ask a question? Who, do you translate English songs, or do you just find translations for you?
Find translations.
Okay, find translations, that's fine. It's hard to do that work, right? If you cannot find native Chinese songs with good depth and good theology, do the hard work and look for English songs with good theology and find translations for it. Your selection might be small, so your work will be hard, but the work is worth it because it will benefit your congregation to sing those rich, nutritional songs, because we learn better in songs than we do in preaching, okay? Now, I'm not saying that the English hymns are better than Chinese, right? But in terms of overall, if you count by centuries, all right, the Western church has been around longer than the Chinese church. So it's just a matter of time, okay? You know, we still sing Amazing Grace today. It's like 500 years old. And we think, oh, wow, the songs back then were all so much better, right? But you forget, it's actually, you forget, back then they weren't singing Amazing Grace. The only reason you know Amazing Grace is it's because it's the best of that time. Back then they had lots of really bad songs as well, okay? And they had to pick through it as well, and their worship leaders had to do the hard work, right? So if you're the song leader who chooses songs, do the hard work. Speak to me later if you want. I can give you some suggestions. There are a couple of fantastic church bands out there in the US and a couple very good ones in Australia that are producing musical content. And they're also working very hard to translate everything so that it can be sung by many different cultures. So it's growing, the resources are growing. So that's the good thing. And that's all I have to say about that, okay? All right, it's almost 4 o'clock. I think it's a good time to call it now. Maybe, could I get somebody, maybe Uncle Kenny, do you think you could close in prayer for us? Whatever language you choose.
亲爱慈悲的天父，我们感谢你，你的儿女来到你面前，我们有这样彼此的机会，我们一起再一次的学习，一起的分享，我们有机会，我们可以再一次的重新的思想，跟慎思我们在你面前的侍奉，我们如何在侍奉当中，我们自己可以持续的有成长，我们如何可以在侍奉的当中。 可以带领你的众儿女，能够更好的侍奉你，在你面前领受你的恩典，也都有成长的机会。谢谢你，我们谢谢你，对你为我们带来的，我们所准备的，就求你在往后的日子里面，继续的使用我们，继续的用你的圣灵浇灌我们，让我们在你的真理里面，我们可以持续的有成长。 也愿我们在侍奉你的道路上面，可以继续的努力往前走，用你的光亮、用你的话语来引导我们。我们谢谢你，愿我们侍奉你的心智能够胜过我们在音乐侍奉上面或许有的不确定或是胆怯的地方。 就求你帮助我们，我们将向你祷告、祈求，是奉耶稣基督的圣名。
Amen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.